The original 151 might always be looked at through rose-tinted glasses, but it's far from perfect. From Pokemon that have been missing types for decades, to legendary Pokemon not even getting the lore they deserve. These are Kanto's biggest mistakes, and how to fix them. As of the Let's Go games, I believe there are 4 main problems with the Kanto games and its Pokemon, and the first of which is type changes that should have happened, but never did. For example, when the Steel type was first introduced, Magnemite and Magneton went from pure electric types to electric and Steel types. And I honestly believe there are a bunch of Pokemon who were just overlooked even during their first release, so let's talk about them. Starting in Pokédex order, let's go with Mega Blastoise. I think when it Mega Evolves, it should turn into a Water and Steel type, as it's the only fully evolved Kanto starter that doesn't have a secondary typing. It could also get Water Rock, but let's be honest, that would just make it even worse. When it Mega Evolves, it's likely its shell hardens anyway, so I think this is a pretty good next step. Cantonian Ninetales is said to live for 1,000 years, and each one of its tails contains a separate supernatural power, yet it stays pure Fire type? I think it could get 2 different secondary typings, but I've gone with Fire Fairy in this case, mainly because it's just a beautiful Pokemon to look at, and is said to have mystical powers, which sways it away from the Fire Psychic typing. Honestly, because of that, it could even get away with being a Fire Ghost type. But let me know what you guys think, as it's a pretty close call between the two. Speaking of Psychic types, how is Golduck not given the Psychic typing? It's had Zilch since its release, and it can learn up to 10 Psychic type moves. It also has multiple Pokédex entries stating that it can use telekinetic powers to become stronger, so it definitely should have had it. Poliwhirl literally just grows arms and gets more bulky. It just looks like a fighting type, and it gets it when it evolves anyway, so it might as well just get it a bit earlier. Hypno not being a dark type has always confused me. Get it? Because it's pure Psychic type, but it confused me. Shut up. Anyway, it has literally been said to hypnotize children and then kidnap them. That's pretty dark if you ask me. Electrode is literally just a Pokeball, and wanna know what they're made out of? Metal. As Steel might as well just be the Metal type. I'm genuinely shocked they didn't get the Steel type along with Magnemite and Magneton. Cantonian Marowak literally had an entire arc about dying and haunting the Pokemon Tower, but didn't get the Ghost Ground typing. I get it literally died, but this was a huge missed opportunity in my opinion. It could have set up some really cool lore for an otherwise quite underwhelming Pokemon. At least when it got its Alola form later down the line, it got the Ghost typing it deserved. Seadra is the Dragon Pokemon, and its name separates to the words sea and dragon. I rest my case. There are so many stories of Gyarados destroying villages and burning them to the ground. Wanna know what's also infamous for doing that? Dragons. Dragon D's so yeah, I think this should be a dragon type as well. I've always felt Mew deserved its own typing, as it felt kinda lame just throwing on the default Psychic typing. I would call this something along the lines of the Universal typing, where every move gets the stab bonus. I get this would be super overpowered, and figuring out weaknesses would be kinda difficult, but like, who cares? You're not gonna battle it anyway. And that's it for type changes. Now let's move on to our next topic, being type specialists and their teams. In the earlier generations, type specialists are kind of known for their questionable team compositions, like Flint's in Diamond and Pearl. He's the Fire type Elite 4 member, but somehow out of a team of 5, he only actually has 2 Fire types, which is mainly due to the bad Diamond and Pearl decks, but that's a topic for another day. Going back to Kanto, let's start off with the gym leaders, and surprisingly, Brock and Misty's teams are actually perfectly fine. I'd love to give Misty a Gyarados, as she has one in the anime, but that would be so brutal if he didn't choose Let's Go Pikachu. So let's start with Lieutenant Surge. As the 3rd gym leader, having a regular Voltorb almost feels like a freebie. And besides, I think he suits Electabuzz a lot more, and he uses one in his rematch team, so I think it's fine. As it's got a higher base stat total, this would also replace Raichu as his ace. Moving on to Erica, there's something about her using a Tangela on her gym team that just doesn't feel right. I think she should swap it for a Cantonian Exeggutor, as it doesn't get used by any other gym leader, not including rematches of course. I also just really like Exeggutor, so I think the goofy guy deserves a bit of spotlight. As you can tell, there's a pattern starting to form with these gym leaders, and Koga is no exception. How do you give him a Venomoth as the 5th gym leader, when Tentacool is stronger and not used by any other specialists in the main story? Also yes, I do understand that I'm just making these teams stronger, but everyone always complains about how the newer games are too easy, so if anything, I'm doing you guys a favour. Going back to the gym leaders, Sabrina's team is actually the first to be completely perfectly fine. I just find it really strange how her ace, Alakazam, only has 2 moves. Honestly, it might as well only have one, as Nightshade is awful, so I'm just going to replace the current moveset with the one she uses in her rematch team. One thing I have noticed about the Kanto gym leaders is how they don't use any evolutions until their rematch teams. This has always confused me because there's no evolution trainer anywhere, as Blaine is the strongest specialist of the 3 different types Eevee can evolve into in Kanto. I think he should swap his Rapidash for a Flareon. Finally, for the gym leaders, I think Giovanni should have a Golem. Why? I don't know, why not? As he's the leader of Team Rocket, I think he should just add it on top of everything else. Now let's talk about the Elite Four, and it's an absolute mess. At least the first Elite Four member, Lorelei, doesn't have any problems. Good job, Lorelei. So next up is Bruno, and this just annoys me even thinking about it. How does a fighting specialist end up with an Onyx when Primeape is right there? Another thing, except for this one guy called Hitoshi in the dojo, absolutely no one uses Primeape anywhere in the main story. He doesn't even get it on his rematch team, as for some odd reason he gets given an Alolan Golem, and somehow that's not even the worst idea they had when designing the Elite Four. Now let's talk about Agatha, and how her entire existence is genuinely stupid. She claims to be a ghost specialist in a region with one line of ghost types, and then proceeds to use poison types instead of ghostly Pokemon. In fact, she can just get the hell out of here. She's basically a dupe type specialist. I've literally just created an entirely new Elite Four member to replace her, and before you say, oh that's mean, she's basically a fossil, so she'll probably retire soon anyway. As for the new kid on the block, this is Dave, and he's centered around normal type Pokemon. He's very soft and kind to the people around him, but deep down he's very competitive. He never directly shows it though. His full team would end up being Snorlax, Dodrio, Wigglytuff, Tauros, and his ace, Mega Kangaskhan. He gets a Mega Evolution due to Lance also having one, and I think it would make the Elite Four a bit more interesting. And then finally, he would add a Porygon to his final rematch team. Going back to Lance, it genuinely baffles me how they made the same mistake twice. Like, there's one whole dragon line in the entire region. Why would they make that his specialty? Luckily, Lance is an easier fix, as he basically doubles up as a flying type specialist. All we'd have to do is change his Mega Charizard X to a Mega Charizard Y, and he'd be good to go. Thank God that mess is over. We can finally move on from type specialists and talk about the legendary Pokemon of Kanto. First off, let's talk about Arcanine. That's not a legendary Pokemon. What are you on about? What is You're so stupid, idiot. Hey, yo, relax. Hear me out, okay? Its species is literally described as the legendary Pokemon, and its stats are also ridiculous, with a base stat total of 555. So I think it's pretty clear they had some intentions with it, they just never went through with it. Of all Pokemon, I feel like Arcanine would have suited the legendary status really well, and besides, who doesn't like Arcanine? If this was the case, it could have some really cool lore about residing in the volcano of Cinnabar Island, and making sure to protect it at all costs. This could also be a reference to the noble Arcanine in Legends Arceus, which does a similar thing. Onto the actual legendaries of the region, let's talk about the 3 legendary birds. I've always really liked this trio, but it's always felt like they were just pushed to the side with no real thought behind them. They've never even been given any lore in the games either. In fact, the only lore they've ever received is in Pokemon the movie 2000. The legend goes, disturb not the harmony of fire, ice, nor lightning, lest these titans wreak destruction upon the worlds on which they clash. So basically, if you annoy any of them ever so slightly, they might just end the world, so if you see any of them, please be nice to them. Jokes aside, they literally have a blueprint for an amazing idea, and I think this would slot in perfectly in something like a Legend Celebi game. And considering we haven't visited Johto for a very long time, there's a chance we could see this in the very near future. Mewtwo definitely has the most lore out of the Kanto legendaries, but why does it just get shoved in Cerulean Cave? The only indicator you get that at least something is in there is that guy who awkwardly stands outside the cave and stops you from entering. Until you beat the Pokemon League, of course. I think we should have at least had a cutscene, even if it's just a small one, to indicate Mewtwo's inside the cave. But this cutscene would only get triggered once you complete the Pokedex. You would then cut to the lab where Mewtwo was created, where we'd then see it breaking free and escaping to Cerulean Cave. You might be wondering, why specifically when you complete the Pokedex? First off, it should not be registered in the Pokedex, as it was only recently created. Besides, it just sounds way cooler to discover a new Pokemon. And secondly, it's by far the strongest Pokemon in Kanto, and I think what they did in Legends Arceus was really cool. They saved the strongest Pokemon in the entire game for last. I think they should definitely do that next time we visit Kanto. Ultimately, let's talk about Red, as he's never really had much in his Kanto appearances. For example, in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Red is shown to be standing atop of Mount Silver and is constantly training. training. This is hinted by Red's Pokemon being far higher level than even members of the Elite Four and the Champion. But in Let's Go, when you beat 6 random Master Trainers, Red just appears outside of Indigo Plateau and challenges you to a battle when you talk to him. He should just get a bit more really, especially as his long-term rival Blue becomes the replacement gym leader of Viridian City. And I'm not saying he should become a gym leader or anything, purely because I don't think that suits him. So there's a few different things I'd like to change here. Let's start off by replacing the 6 random Master Trainers by making it so you have to defeat the Master Trainers that use his 6 Pokemon. Once you've beaten all 6 trainers, you would then get approached by Professor Oak. He would then mention a mysterious trainer, this of course being Red, and he'd claim him to be the strongest trainer in the world. You'd then be given a location, which would of course lead you to where he is, and once you interact with him, the battle would begin. I say a location because I'm not actually sure where this would lead you, probably up a mountain or somewhere away from everyone else. I'd also like to add one extra detail to truly signify his strength, and this would be his use of held items. This would prove his strength because in the Let's Go games, the player doesn't have access to held items. As for his team's held items, they would be a Light Ball for Pikachu, an Expert Belt for Machamp, Life Orb for Arcanine, Choice Band for Lapras, Leftovers for Snorlax, and finally a Venusaurite for his Venusaur. I definitely think this would not only give him the respect he deserves, but also would be a great continuation to his legacy that Heart Gold and Soul Silver gave him. What do you guys think of the Kanto region as a whole? Do you think it's awesome or the opposite? Personally, it's not my favourite region ever, but I do think its Pokemon are a great representation for the Pokemon series, for the most part anyway. That's it for the video. If you'd like to see another video of mine, click the video on screen and I'll speak to you guys later. Bye bye.